back. We resume our program with a roundtable session moderated by Professor Joana Rezende. Professor Rezende is the Vice Rector for Strategic Planning, Knowledge Valorization and Entrepreneurship of the University of Porto, and will now introduce the speakers of our next roundtable session, Research and Innovation Collaboration Avenues Beyond EUGLOHRIA.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this final roundtable. We are now going to discuss about research and innovation collaboration avenues beyond EUGLOHRIA. And as we reach the end of these 3 days discussing research and innovation and how European alliances can leverage the assets that we have and transform them into innovative solutions that can transform people's life, I would say this is the ideal way to end these 3 intensive days of discussion. We have the great pleasure to have in this final roundtable António Portela, who is an alumni from University of Porto, from this school, but he is also the CEO of Bial, the largest Portuguese pharmaceutical company, who can share his views on how academia-business cooperation can be enhanced through European alliances like the European Alliance for Global Health. We also have joining us here in the stage Professor Idilco Joca. She's the Director General for Strategic Planning from University of Szeged, and she has been collaborating from the very start with the EUGLO project, and she will certainly share her views on how we can go further on this collaboration beyond the project EUGLOHRIA. And also, directly from Paris-Saclay, we have the pleasure of having with us here Florence Law. She's a professor at the Research Center in Economics and Management from Université Paris-Saclay, who is with Bertin Sergot, also a professor at the Research Center in Economics and Management at Université Paris-Saclay. Thanks for joining us online and also for sharing with us your views on how can we boost cooperation now that the EUGLOHRIA project is reaching again, the end, but the EUGLO Alliance will continue, and certainly this is one important mission area that we will work in the coming years. To start the discussion, I would like to kindly ask the speakers to briefly introduce themselves with, if possible, explaining how in their daily activities they are boosting academia business cooperation and how they are using this at the benefit of their own business or their own institution. And I will start with António, who is representing the industry here today. Good afternoon, António.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Joana, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to participate at the meeting here. So I'm António, and I was actually my degrees from the University of Porto, but specifically from this school, the School of Economics. So it's always good to be back home after so many years. And I'm also, as Joana said, I'm also the CEO of Bial. Bial is the biggest pharmaceutical company in Portugal. We just a few brief things about what we do. So we're actually going to turn 100 years old in April next year. So in 6 months' time, the company will be 100 years old. A company founded by my great-grandfather in 1924. We have today we employ about 850 people in the company. More than 80% of them have university degrees, and 10% are PhDs. We have a research department that focuses mainly on neuroscience, but also very recently we've started getting our footprint in rare diseases, and that's where we have most of our PhDs in the company, and we work very closely with academia in that sense. We have developed, two drugs that we brought to the market, both in neuroscience, one for epilepsy and the other one for Parkinson's disease. And over the years, I think that I'm comfortable to say that the collaborations with the academia, we collaborate with, I would say, almost all the universities in Portugal, and also a number of universities outside Portugal, and that collaboration has been fundamental for BL. The type of collaborations, and I think I'll have the opportunity to explain a little bit more later about what we do and what my view is on how we could collaborate further, is obviously we can't live without the expertise that comes out of the university, and that's what BL has based its research and development department on, is people coming from the academia, but also from the collaborations that we foster over the years. So we've had many, I think in the last 10 years we've had more than 150 collaborations with different universities and institutions around the world. So part of the DNA of the company is actually, to work in the development of the processes with the academia. I think pharma would not exist if there's no close collaboration with academia.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Let me now move to Idilco.
I'm a pharmacist, let's say, so pharma-industrial relations is very common for me, and we are familiar with cooperation in pharma industry. But generally at the University of Szeged, I think that universities are the center of knowledge, the base for a critical mass of knowledge in different disciplines. And we are good for industrial relations, having this deep basic knowledge in different disciplines. But our role and what we are doing at the University of Szeged, and even EUGLO is a very good alliance and platform for this, to find a common language and close and keep and this road between us, between the industry and between the university researchers, to find a common language and form bridges between the academics and the scientists and the managers and the industrial partners. So I think we have a major role. All the TTOs working at different universities, and we saw here in the previous sessions that all EUGLO universities, they have their management units within the university to bring together scientists for a special industrial problem or challenge, and to collect the knowledge from each university to put together the knowledge for the industrial interest. So I think we have a kind, as a universities and our scientists, they form as a pool of knowledge, from which pool we can select according to the special challenge what industry raises for us. So we can look for, if there is need for an IT person, a pharmacist, a medical doctor, an architect, an engineer, or another a biologist or chemist. So we can very quickly form a team of research team with interdisciplinary team for our industrial problem. I think this is the role of our universities.
Thank you, Idilco. And now let's move directly to Paris. And I would like to ask Florence and Bertrand, you are professors who study in your research and who teach about entrepreneurship and innovation promotion. So if you can explain us a bit better your how you deal every day in your teaching and research with this issue of academia-business cooperation.
So good afternoon to all. So I'm Florence Law, professor of entrepreneurship and strategy at Université Paris-Saclay. So I will talk about my daily activities in terms of research and teaching. So with Bertrand, we have undertaken a project on studying in incubators of Paris-Saclay. So that's the first a way to connect academia and also the businesses. And so that's one point. And then another way from me also to make a link between academia and businesses is that we teach entrepreneurship here, and we also coach student entrepreneurs in the university with the development of their projects, donc entrepreneurship projects, and so that's also another way to make the link between academia and businesses. So, Bertrand?
Yes, I mainly teach, and Florence a bit also, I mainly teach undergraduates in management and marketing. So as such, we have constant interactions with companies through the students to find internship, apprenticeship, to also learn or keep a pace with the changes that we have to teach our students. And we also exchange a lot with people from these companies. Some of them are teaching students very important in very important fields. So we exchange also a lot on a day-to-day basis with companies through our teaching activities, not only research, but also teaching activities.
Well, yes, so from this very first round of discussions, I think it was highlighted the three important avenues through which universities and academia collaborate. One is, of course, teaching and the preparation of human capital that is later on absorbed by the industry and make our industries more competitive, our firms. Also joint research projects that can lead to innovative results with large corporations like BIAL, and also the entrepreneurship avenue as a possibility that our researchers can create successful startups that then can lead to economic growth. And I would like to take this point because also in the morning sessions it was clear that companies, there was the EUGLO team made a survey to ask companies what would be the added value of EUGLO Alliance in what comes to academia business cooperation, and clearly one of the things that resulted from this survey was the possibility of joint research and development endeavors, and also even the participation in joint startups. And this is a critical aspect for the development of higher education institutions in the recent paradigm where innovation and entrepreneurship has entered in a definite way in the university's mission. But it's also very important to the promotion of innovation of Europe and to reinforce the capability of Europe to position as an innovative, truly innovative region. So I would like to hear your views on what could be some successful models of cooperation if research and innovation projects, whether should they be led by European Union calls, or if they should be more sponsored by firms, what kind of partnerships we can envisage to promote closer cooperation and to promote cooperation in such a way that we are really reinforcing the capability of Europe to become more innovative, to reinforce, for example, when we look into patents indicators and we compare the performance of Europe with the performance of the US and now with the performance of countries like China, we have the feeling that we really need to do something to make our region as a whole more innovative. What are your views on this? I know this is a difficult question, but we are here discussing an European alliance that has the final goal of reinforcing European capability of affirming itself worldwide as an excellence center for knowledge production. But it's very important that we have the also at the same time working on the capabilities to make this knowledge favor the innovation capabilities of Europe. So if you can share with us, if you ever thought of successful models of how can we help making this path that is so important for Europe? And I would now start again with Antonio, if I may.
I think that's a very important theme. Obviously, I don't I don't pretend to understand, because I don't understand about how all sectors operate. I understand how the pharma sector operate. So I'll tell you a little bit about the pharma sector and how we see the collaborations and the opportunities, or the potential opportunities that we see. So when in everything we do, we have one purpose, which is to serve patients. Is to make sure that we can serve patients. Give patients, symptoms relief, cure patients. That's what we do as a company, but we don't have all the knowledge. We don't have all the capabilities inside the company. And no company, no pharma company, as big as they are, they have all the knowledge and all the equipments, everything internally. So the collaboration with academia and with the different institutes is absolutely fundamental, so that we can work together and bring this, innovation, being products or services, to serve patients, to make sure that patients are there. And I think there are, for me, there are three key elements that need to be aligned. One is we need to have common goals and objectives. We need to, when we collaborate, we need to, and this is true for pharma and academia, but true, for any partnership, we need to have common goals and objectives in what we are trying to get. There needs to be effective communication in terms of understanding what each party is going to bring to the table, what each party is going to do. And at the end of the day, there need to be mutual benefits, for both parties. So, in a partnership, it can't be just, one winning everything and the other one not. So there needs to be mutual benefits for both parties when we come together. And I think when we look at the role of the research institutions, I mean, academia provides. And I think you mentioned this before, expertise and knowledge in certain fields that only exists in academia, that industry doesn't have. There's research that's only happening in academia. You've got state-of-the-art facilities, equipment, and technology. Data that you gather that the industry sometimes doesn't have. So for us, we see this as a very interesting collaboration, to go and get the benefits of what academia is doing, of the competences, the equipments, and to accelerate, what we are trying to achieve. There's also, in that collaboration, there are also benefits, for students, because students get exposed, to working with the industry, and to translating with which I think is a key element in this partnership, is how do we translate the science and the research into a product that is actually going to benefit a patient. And that is something that academia normally doesn't know how to do. That's what industry knows how to do. Is how to transform science, how to transform an idea into a product that actually can benefit the life of a patient. And obviously, for students, that they can gain real life experience in terms of working with the industry, working very close, understanding how the process works in terms of in our case, developing a drug to bring a drug to the market, the collaborations that they might get exposed to, and also the technologies that they get access to when they work with industry. But there are many challenges that I think we face, in terms of getting different goals of what we're trying to achieve, because obviously academia works in a certain way, rewards their people in a different way that the industry rewards their people. Sometimes there's lack. Well, the communication doesn't flow, you know, and we don't really align the communication between what academia is trying to achieve and what the industry is trying to achieve. And then there's one fundamental point, which is, and Joanna has already mentioned it, is the ownership. You know, who owns the technology? You know, is it the academia, is it the industry, or is it the co-ownership in terms of how we develop? And I think, you know, for me, these are the things that you know, are really important. Obviously, then there's, you know, accessing public funds, where, you know, and trying to understand how we can change this is obviously fundamental. Now, when I look at, and I'll if I have time again, I'll touch on this a little bit more in terms of comparing what we have been doing in Europe, Europeans have been doing, to what the US has been doing, because, you know, we've gathered some data about this. But I think one of the things that we clearly see, namely in the pharma sector, is the pharma sector is lagging behind the US, and is starting to lag behind, you know, China and even Japan, in terms of what we do, in terms of the innovation that we do. And I'm not saying in terms of the academic research, but the innovation that actually reaches patients. If we look back 15 or 20 years, 5 of the 10 top-selling products in the world came from Europe. If we look now, I think it's 1 or 2 that come from Europe. There's 5 or 6 that come from the US, and there are products that are coming from China and from Japan. And if we continue the path that we are on, and we don't change this, at some point Europe will not have any products, you know, in the major products that serve, you know, the patients. This has been a major shift in terms of, you know, what Europe was. You know, Europe was the driver of innovation in pharma 15 or 20 years ago, and this has completely shifted to the US, while Europe has, you know, is continuing to maintain, you know, a number of things that, you know, we are very stagnant. And one of these days, if we don't pay attention, we're going to be overtaken by China. China is making a huge investment in, you know, collaborations with the academia in terms of data, you know, because they have access to, you know, tons of data, while Europe is still discussing, you know, who owns the data? Can I use the data? Can we use it? Can't we use it? China is not concerned about that. As you know, the data belongs to the government, so the data is being widely used, you know, to actually produce research that will, you know, eventually bring products or services that, you know, to patients. So China is going to make a huge leap in terms of the future. And we Europeans, you know, sometimes we're too concerned about things that are not focusing on the purpose of, say, serving patients.
Thank you, Antonio. This is true for the pharmaceutical industry, but certainly also true for other sectors. And so I would now move to Idilco, if you can complement, if you agree with this vision, and also if you can complement with your views on how European can become more competitive in the fields of innovation.
Yes, I agree what you said. I don't know what is the background, whether you saw any evaluation about these changes or what are behind these changes that Europe is going lower and lower. Do you know anything about it? What is the background of it? Sorry to ask back, but I will continue. Just I'm interested in to know what is, if anybody evaluated this kind of decrease of Europe in this position, what were the main aspects of it?
Sorry, I don't want to monopolize the discussion, but there are a number of reasons why the US, for example, has been very successful. You know, there's a big difference in terms of culture, in terms of education and funding of the projects. Mm-hmm. In the US, there's you know, the industry and academia collaborate much more, much closer. There is a, sorry, give me 1 second.
Just because these are the lessons for us to
Yeah,
learn.
yeah.
There is,
That's
you know, the difference that exists. You know, part of the difference is the mindset behind academia in the US is a lot more related to translation and to commercialization, where the mindset in Europe is much more around
Science.
research and science.
Yeah. Okay.
So difficult in terms
Yeah.
of translation. And this is one of the fundamental issues that exists. The second thing is about ownership. You know, in the US, it's very clear that, you know, IP, you know, there is, IP doesn't belong to academia. IP could belong or to the researchers, but if it belongs to the researchers, they will have to go and find funding, and they know, and a lot of them do. They go and find funding, and you know they have loads of ways of finding funding in the US, and they start, you know, they build a startup, and then they go from there. In Europe, we still have this, you know, this discussion or this disconnect between who owns the IP. So in the US, it's very clear. If I'm a researcher or academia and I want to own the IP, I need to build a startup, I need to find funding for that. If not, then the IP is owned by the industry because the industry is going to pay for the development. And eventually, the university or the institute, you know, can benefit from royalties in the future. You know, if the drug is successful in the market, can benefit. And those rules are very clear. In Europe, it seems like we don't talk the same language, you know, because the industry wants to own the IP as we are developing, you know, we're putting all the money in. But academia also wants to own the IP, but doesn't have any funding to develop the drugs. So we end up in a situation where, you know, we are, you know, we're not communicating, and that's why I said, you know, communication is very important. We're not really communicating with each other because academia is saying one thing, the industry is saying another, and at the end of the day, you know, projects don't move forward. It doesn't mean that the research that academia is doing in Europe is worse than the US. But the ways of working that they found in the US are much more effective than what we're doing in Europe at the moment.
That's exactly what I think about the topic, because this, I think we at the universities, we are sitting on our gold and keeping it somehow, or not able to even understand the value what we have. And that means that in some time, when the industrial partners are coming to universities, let's say decades ago when I started my researcher careers, then they wanted and they paid very small money for the university researchers. University researchers, they were very happy to have some extra money from industry and to work something which they felt now this is really useful because they work for real patient care, not only for publication, because publication as a goal, as a target is a very short way of thinking, because only publishing and that's I finished with my research. The real finish is when the product or what I invented is on the market. So absolutely, this is what I also see, that here in the scientific field, we are very science-focused, publication-focused, and what I see at our university, as I'm also manager and also scientist, try to make the bridge between two ways of thinking. But when, as a manager, I discuss with our researcher colleagues that, okay, wait, let's see whether there is a novelty and patent it, and to bring it to the market, start to communicate with industrial partners. Maybe not publication is the right way of distributing this knowledge, maybe patenting or collaboration. But it's quite difficult to discuss this with the science-focused researchers. That's absolutely agreed that a common language should be somehow to developed, even within EUGLO partners. What is this common language, or how to solve this Europe unique problem or challenge? because we won't be the losers of this game, and we are almost the losers of this game if we are not connecting and we are not having the critical mass of researchers and innovation potential. Then we won't be partners for China and for US. This is, and I think this is one of the main goals of this alliance, to form a critical mass in global health innovations, put together what we have, make the hubs, the excellence hubs in different research groups, and this joint knowledge, this joint infrastructure, this joint maybe IP, let's say, policy or something. We should develop these 9 universities somehow to reach to that level, that we can be a partners, or we can be at that level where China is or US is. So I think that this is a matrix structure, these 9 universities, a kind of matrix, because somehow we have to have a way from science to industry, then somehow collaboration between nations and discussions of different countries' regulations. For example, in patents, however, we are European Union, there are many small differences. So it's not an easy task, but I think that without clarifying the IP rights of different innovative ideas, this collaboration won't work. So I think this is the basis. Who has the idea? For an idea to be shared, it's an essential to be somehow, how to say, that the owner feels safe with the idea. And if he or she is safe with the idea that I will not lose it, then I will share it. This is the way of thinking. So I think a basic work what we should do in alliance, somehow to put together our tech transfer offices work and the regulation of different countries, and somehow to clarify the IP rights, and then the alliance at the university, higher educational institutions, and then as a next step between industry and higher educational institutions. And when the game is clear and the rules of the game are clear, then everybody will share the thoughts and ideas. But without clarified rules, as you mentioned, without clear rules, nobody will move and nobody will clear up and deliver up the ideas.
Well, thanks a lot for this interesting discussion. And before moving the conversation to Paris, let me bring you a few more ingredients based on what we have heard so far. You have been studying several entrepreneurial ecosystems with a special focus in Paris-Saclay entrepreneurial ecosystem. And what we have been hearing so far is that for several reasons, public policies being one of them, entrepreneurial capabilities in Europe are far behind the current situation in the US or in China, which may result in this lack of innovation performance in Europe. What are your views on current funding systems? Because in the past years we had never had before so many funds for science in Europe, and what are we missing when in these public funds we are giving to science? What are we missing in the capability of transforming those funds into something that can actually make this knowledge available for innovation? This is one line of thought. I would like to know your views. And also, regarding this discussion on patents, patents have become an important asset for sure for all the universities. They are something is important for universities to show in the rankings, to position themselves as innovative universities. But when we look into the performance and royalties that come out of these patents, the performance is very low in general. And while it's expected that not all the patents will translate into profits, the truth is that also you need to have professional teams that are focused in commercialization to make these patents profitable. And I'm not sure whether this is working fine. In our universities, we have different realities in this aspect. Since you have studied, I'm not sure if in your previous studies this is something that you looked at, but to which extent different regulations regarding patent ownership, technology ownership, may be hindering the capability of European researchers to translate the research results into successful market solutions that can save patients' life in the case of pharmacy, or can improve their life, but also that can change the environment, for example. So we are focusing a bit on the pharmaceutical industry, but the truth is this could go in many other sectors. So if I may have your comments on this, these are...
I must say first that we are not experts in patenting, but we have looked for some years now into the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Paris-Saclay, and we have tried to look at how this entrepreneurial ecosystem may help connect better companies with universities and School of Engineering, which, as you may or may not know, in France are not inside, most of the time not inside the universities, but we think that there are still some progress to be made. I will say, but with caution, that it's on both sides that progress should be made, because it's as was said, it's a question of mindset. There are patents and question of patenting, that's for sure. But also, at least in France, we don't have the same mindset in the research teams in university on one side, and in research team in companies on other side, not always. There have been some significant progresses, and I think on some aspects we can be optimistic on that. But there are still some room to make things better, especially through researchers from public or publicly funded team that are in university to fund startups, to start their own businesses and try to translate their research into products that can be commercialized. It's still not as it could be. There is a huge potential. That's the good thing. But yes, we still have to tap into this potential, I think.
What I may add from the examples of startups that we have looked at, it seems that on the researcher side, they are not incented to create or promote the creation of businesses, because it's not part of their institution objective to endeavor such projects. So maybe that could be this objective of an entrepreneur best business startup creation should be perhaps included in objective of research as part of an indicator, maybe the number of startups that have been funded from a patent or a research results, for instance, because as a researcher, we are mostly evaluated on the number of publications or maybe the number of patents that we develop. So a way to perhaps to promote the link between research and companies, businesses, maybe to include such evaluation, and also to help the creation of this type of association.
Yes, and one transversal aspect to all your interventions lies on the funding, on the funding issues. And patents are certainly an important asset that may, facilitate the translation of knowledge into products. But in some areas like tech, business, IT, the patents are not even, at least in Europe, it's not so frequent to patent this kind of results. And regarding funding, in Portugal, like in our entrepreneurial ecosystem here at University of Porto, for example, we have sometimes really promising businesses, so coming from very interesting, innovative research and development outcomes. And when it comes to the moment that these companies really need to grow, they end up going to the US because that's where the VCs are, that's where they will raise capital, then they put the headquarters in the US, and some we still keep the connection, in other cases they just become global companies. So also I would like to know your views whether we might be too late in what comes to funding these startups. We saw that, for instance, Germany recently approved a large amount of capital to fund industry. We were discussing right before this session. I was discussing with Eric whether this there is room or there should be a coordinated also kind of package in the context of Europe or not. Are we already too late because we have many years late in comparison with the US? And nowadays, at least here, we feel it's kind of, impossible. We even encourage our companies to go there because we want them to be as successful as possible. And the other thing related to this is also the kind of public supporting mechanisms regarding venture capital. Whether you think existing mechanisms that provide small support to companies on a local basis, whether they actually can encourage and strengthen academia-business cooperation, or if they may have the opposite result of providing too short support and not on a market basis, so not necessarily investing in the most promising results. And I would follow the usual order and ask Antonio his views on these funding issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Europe we do face an issue with funding, and it's a big limitation that exists because if I'm a researcher or if I work in a research team in the US and we've got a brilliant idea, we patent that idea and we go around, and if the idea is really good, it won't be difficult to find funding. There will be venture capital that will fund the idea, being pharma or being something else. When we look at Europe, the scenario is very different. The availability of this type of funding is very little. So I think projects coming from academia, there are some small amounts, as you said, that can be given, but they don't allow the company then to jump and to grow. They allow the company to start, but if and I know that some countries are putting funds and behind, but the public funds normally are very, very inefficient. I mean, if we look, the whole US system is a private system, and they're very, very efficacious. They invest in 10 companies, and 9 will probably die. 1 will make $1 billion or 10 billion or whatever, and he pays everything off. In Europe, we try to put in too many things, but we put very little. And I mean, I know some of the European examples, but for sure I know that the Portuguese examples, there's very little funding available. And the funding that is available, they try to spread it by many projects so that everybody gets a little bit of the share. Now, when this is done, yeah, you can start, but you're not going to be able to grow. So, and that's where the industry comes. So but for the industry to fund, and again, there needs to be a collaboration and the rights of what need to be decided. I'll give you one example. We've got a board member at BIAL who is a lady, and she just stepped down as CEO of a non-profitable organization in the UK. It's called LifeArc. And LifeArc came originally from an academic institution. And they worked on a research project that was, I'm not sure if Merck is the originator company or not, but Merck has developed the drug. It's an oncology drug. And today, the drug's called Keytruda, and it's one of the most successful drugs worldwide. Now, over the past, I'm not sure if it's 6 or 7 years, LifeArc has made, all the rights are owned by Merck, but LifeArc has retained royalties if the drug would work in the future. They have collected until today $1 billion in royalties. That is something amazing. I mean, the story of LifeArc is something amazing, because obviously they've worked on projects that they couldn't fund, so they were paid for their services, and they retained future royalties if the drug ever reached the market. So in this case, they were able, because the drug is such a big global success, they are making a ton of money, which they're now reinvesting in other projects, and LifeArc is now, they've spun out of the university, and now they have their own business. They're funding a lot of things. So, for me, it's a great example of how, the collaboration of an institute that actually looked at this and says, look, we would not be able to fund any of this ourselves, or find the funding, or find someone, because there is little funding in Europe, and you're right, there is some public funding, but it's small. It tends to be spread out, and the bureaucracy, to get that funds and to reply is huge. We don't have the system that the US has, and to be honest, I don't know what needs to be done, to create that system in Europe, but it is a gap, a significant gap that we have compared to where the US is.
Yes. Idilko, do you agree with this?
Yes, I would agree with this. And also I would say that the whole European Union's Resiliency and Recovery Fund and this policy speaks about regional ecosystems and regional self-sustainability, let's say. So I think that instead of waiting for help from big public funds and waiting for the money of the European Union, we should focus on our regional ecosystem and our industrial partners who are around us in our own country, in our region, while parallel with this, working together in the alliance to learn the best practices, to learn from each other, to teach each other, to have a kind of really sharing the good practices what we have, but thinking globally in this meaning, but acting locally in our region and with our industrial partners, with our own startups or spin-off companies, because I think that this can have an added value for the regional to stay in the region, to stay in the country, to have those industries who are around us. So somehow a mixture of private funding from industrial, services, from industry, university collaboration. So I would stay on more, more places, more stable as a university, partially from public fund, but bigger and bigger ratio from these funds to get from industrial partner and to work together with the industry on special projects, starting from small to bigger projects. So I think that private money based on a value, on a project based with the university research group or industry research, this would be small and bottom-up steps to build up the university ecosystem with the regional industries and then to go maybe Europe-wide, but from methodology, learn from alliance. So think globally and act locally, somehow a mixture of this.
Thank you, Idilko. And now straight to Paris. What are your views on these funding aspects? How they can, how the portfolio of funding instruments that is currently used can be used to boost entrepreneurial ecosystems connected to universities?
I think that funding is still a limitation for European startups to grow beyond being startups. But in France, at least, I will stay on what I know best. Things are better than they used to be 10 or 20 years ago. There are more funding, both public and private. And it allows companies to go to some extent, which means that, as was said, and I agree with that, when they reach a certain scale, they find themselves inside something that is not habilitating to grow more and more. I think that, in a sense, and EUGLO is very useful for that, Europe is still too fragmented on that point. We talk about Portugal, about other countries. I talk about France because it's not always easy to go across boundaries when you are looking for funding for such ventures as tech startups. It is possible, but I think there are still limitations that Americans, for instance, don't have as such in funding.
Yes, and of course we keep discussing the case of the US, but certainly in the geo-economical balance in the coming years, for sure, other power economies will show up with an innovative power that if we take as a proxy for that the number of patents, for sure it will become even harder. So I think we are approaching the end. I don't know if there is any question from the audience. Yes, Eric Hassan. We have. So, Eric Hassan, Vice President from Paris-Saclay.
Thanks a lot for the very nice discussion. I have a question. So the discussion is very insightful. Okay, you have made a very not extensive but a very broad picture. You have drawn a very broad picture of the limitations that we may have in Europe, but we have also assets. And indeed, we have this alliance, and there are other alliances. But anyway, I would like, this is a question perhaps, I don't know, for the persons that are able to give some insights in the reply. I would like to ask you if there are some things to be done at the European level or at the national level in terms of regulation. Is it a question of mindset, of cultures, let's say of the pupils, of the students, even of the professionals? Is it a question of mindset, or is it a question of regulations? So fundings, for sure, are in the picture. We would need more fundings available for the growth of our spin-off of our startups, etc. But so, do we need to do something in terms of regulation or not? Are there limitations? Especially due to the fact that, as pointed out by Bertrand, the European market is very segmented, fragmented. Or is there not any issue on that side, and perhaps this is only a question of mindset?
I can start. I've got a clear view on that, and I think you're posing a very good question, because sometimes we think that all these things, they depend on regulation, they depend on the government, they depend on the state. I don't think this is the case here. I think this depends on us, academia, and on us, industry. It's a cultural transformation that we need to do. What I think it's probably important is that we adapt our own regulations in the industry and our own regulations in academia. You know, we need to reward, and if I'm thinking about the Portuguese case, there's still many companies in Portugal that don't see value in working with academia, in having PhDs, because they think, why am I hiring, someone that has, PhD that is so expensive? They don't see value in innovation, in developing. So there is work to be done, I think, in the industry, and there's also work to be done in the academia. And I think you mentioned this before, the academia, still too much focused on, the research, in publications, and there needs to be a balance between fundamental research is absolutely essential and needs to continue, but there needs to be, some of the researchers need to work on translational projects with the industry. But I think we need to do this ourselves. I don't think there's any regulation. I think we need to approach, and I think it's not one or the other. It's both the industry and the academia need to, the industry needs to understand much better that academia can bring a lot of value to what we do. And that's not clear to me, that this is the case today.
Okay, thank you.
I don't.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have further comments on what has just been said by Antonio. Okay, so I would... one more question,
yes,
sorry.
One comment. Thank you for dealing with the problem of patents and intellectual property, because I think that the aim inside EUGLO is to mutualize resources, to propose projects and, for example, joint PhD or internship around all the partners. So the problem is how can we deal with intellectual property? I just gave an example. In Centrale Supélec, for example, there is a student who has a project who is supervised by a researcher, and because of the law, the researcher has to transfer the IP to the students. It's the case. So how can we cope with this intellectual property discussion for all the partners? If we are 9 partners, we are very different way of dealing with the intellectual property. I think that it's not maybe a question because it's too many questions about that, but I think that maybe it will lead to other discussions about how we can mutualize and have dealing with the property, intellectual property.
That's the case, that the student and the PhD students has the rights, if the idea, not the mentor and not the supervisor and not the researcher. So it's very difficult. It's a practical, it's a real life. Nobody understands the value of a supervisor. If I give an idea to the student, even that is a good idea, not to go there because there is nothing, because I already checked, go this way. So this kind of orientation, supervising, mentoring students has no value in this point of view because the IP goes to the student or the PhD student. This is, it's very interesting, but this should be like in a contract. When we join together to make a business, as the first meeting, we should agree who gets what from the collaboration. That's the clear game. And this not later on, when there is a result, and then we start fighting. Okay, it was my idea. Oh, no, I know. I give the idea to you, and then the consequence of my idea is there's the result, which is now yours. So, no. As a starting, this is what we also have to learn from the real life, out of university life, that real collaboration starts with an agreement. So when a handshake is made, then it's a clear view. You put this into this collaboration, I put this, and finally how we share on the results. So this is also the case.
I think if I may add, I'm in full agreement with what you said. I think that the rules need to be established, before, and this is true within one academia, for example, the University of Porto, who owns what. but also, or more importantly, if you have a consortium, where several universities and researchers from different universities are working together, you need to agree this before. That was one of the first things I said. The key goals, the communication, that needs to be done first and not after,
Yes, yeah.
because then after you generate a lot of problems. So these things need to be agreed, need to be decided before they come there. But let me just add one thing to this point. A patent in itself, or IP in itself, has zero value. If I can't sell it, it has zero value. And that's something that I think some people don't understand. If I'm a researcher, and sorry to put it so bluntly, but if I'm a researcher, or I'm an university, and I think, no, I've developed this is my IP. That IP is worth zero. If I can't develop a product, if I can't develop a service, if I can't sell it, it's worthless. Now, how do we make that IP worth money? There needs to be investment. There needs to be, I don't know, for example, in the pharmaceutical industry, we have to invest, hundreds of millions, to get to a product. So, is a researcher capable of doing this? No. Then, again, we need to be very clear. So if the researcher is not able to do this, then who is able to do this? If the industry is able to do this, then, the IP needs to be transferred. And, if it gets to the market, then the researcher will get some money. So I think we need to understand what is IP and when does IP become valuable, because I might have something that is looks very interesting, but if I can't commercialize it, if I can translate this into a product or into a service, it's worth nothing. So what's the point in having? Well, it's not. It's worse than not worth nothing. A patent costs money, so it actually costs you more money instead of you making money. So this is something that we need to weight and balance in terms of if I own a patent but I don't develop it because I don't have the money, then I've got zero. If I share it with someone, then and I'm very careful with co-ownerships of IP. Co-ownership of IP is, again, because of the reasons you said, is very difficult because unless the rules are very well established, it's really, really difficult to, then people start fighting.
Yeah, so one conclusion also from this discussion is that we could learn from EUGLOH experience, and I must say the reality in EUGLOH universities is very different. We have kind of done a informal benchmarking, and for instance here in University of Porto, our regulations state that IP always belongs to the university. In Lund, for example, the IP rights always belong to the researcher, not to the university. And one interesting thing that we can learn from these collaborations is also to try to understand which different schemes are more prone to innovation, and especially on that area. Perhaps we have gone too far in what comes to regulation, because this flexibility of deciding who does what and who takes care of what is certainly important to be able to then invest in commercialization efforts, which are not so much in the mission of universities, because what we have to understand is, like, for instance, as a university like University of Porto with 400 patents, the administrative costs of managing this patent portfolio are huge. And so the amount of highly qualified capital that you need to have, and also the commercial effort that you have to put on this, while at the same time you need to do research and you need to invest in buildings and all that. This perhaps this should be a discussion that we could introduce. And well, the topic for the session today was collaboration avenues beyond EUGLOHRIA. So this goes certainly much farther than EUGLOHRIA, and is certainly an important debate to increase European competitiveness. through this stronger academia-business cooperation. And I think we have already run out of time, but I would like to end this session taking these 3 ideas that Antonio put to push academia-business cooperation, because I think they are very important to push academia-business cooperation, but I think they are important to boost cooperation in general, and in particular in the context of our European Alliance for Global Health, which has expanded and has an incredible horsepower, because we are speaking of an alliance with more than 300,000 students, 80,000 researchers, research infrastructures that are incredible. We have 3 synchrotrons within this network. And so we are in a privileged position to reach incredible outcomes. And so I would remind these 3 ingredients that Antonio mentioned, because I think they are important for us to collaborate more with industry, but also to collaborate more among us in an effective way. That is, first, to establish common goals and objectives. Of course, each of us has their own priorities, but we have a common ground where we can move forward in the area of research and innovation, for sure. The second idea of effective communication sometimes is a matter of communicating in the right way, and this is quite important. And of course, this identification of mutual benefits, and I'm sure that this can act as a platform also to improve the relationship with each of our regional ecosystems, which are certainly have their strengths on their own, but if we see them as a connection, the capabilities are much stronger. So I would like to thank all the speakers, thank to Florence and Bertrand, who are joining us from online. I hope to see you in Porto at some time. And I would finish this roundtable now. Thank you very much.
Discussions, we reached the end of a series of EUGLOHRIA back-to-back events. Partners addressed the different dimensions of collaboration in research and innovation and brought together the scientific community and external stakeholders working with the Alliance to enhance cooperation across different fields and regions. We now invite Professor Joana Rezende, Vice Rector of the University of Porto, to give the closing speech.
Well, good afternoon again. This is just an informal closing words. Thanks for resisting until the very end of this EUGLOHRIA event. We had 3 events here in Porto, and I would like to thank all the people that were involved in the organization. I know that you put all your efforts in the organization of this event, and I think we were quite successful in showing now that this project, EUGLOHRIA, is coming to an end. It was evident throughout these 3 days the potential that research and innovation collaborations have for the development of our alliance. And what the discussion here, just in the roundtable, showed us is that more than, an ambition or a luxury that we want to do as an alliance, this became a need, a responsibility that higher education institutions in Europe have to collaborate and to make our region stronger and to collaborate in the creation of innovations that can change the life of people. Because the truth is, we are living challenges like we don't have precedents like this. The climate question, for example, which is a crucial aspect, because if we don't have good environment, for sure we will not be healthy societies. This is clear. And how the scientific community seems to be reaching a consensus that behavior alone will not allow us to move forward in an efficient way in this matter. So we really need innovation. And what the discussion showed here is that although we have been done a lot of work in the past, we have a lot of work ahead of us. And each of our institutions is very strong. As you know, for instance, in the EUGLO Alliance, this year we had several Nobel laureates somehow related to our universities. And the work they do on their own is, of course, fantastic. But the potential that we have as an alliance to transform this work into innovative solutions that can position Europe at the forefront of innovation is, of course, very demanding, but we should take the responsibility and we should be aware that perhaps this is no longer a question of whether we will do it, it's more a question of how we will do it, because otherwise we risk not such a nice future. I hope, now that this EUGLOHRIA project is coming to an end, I hope that we are able to find the resources to keep the work going and to extend it even to other fields, especially in what comes to the research agenda. The EUGLOHRIA project was focused and it showed in a very successful way how research collaborations in the area of pandemics can be boosted by putting in contact several researchers whose results, the results of the seeding grants that these researchers obtained were shown. And the interesting thing for me was that we were seeing the presentations, and a lot of them were saying, I've never seen my colleague who is running this project with me. And so this means that it's possible to start up also new research lines, but now we need to invest resources and bringing these people together and making these starting projects to transform them into deeper and more sustainable research lines within the Alliance. We have done this for pandemics. I think we can then do this for many other scientific domains. So I hope that in the future we find the means, and those means that do not necessarily have to be funds from the European Commission, because we need to find ways, as we have seen in the previous conversation, to find ways and activities where we are on our own ready to invest, because if we keep on waiting for the funds, then we are always running after the money and not doing exactly what we think is a priority for us. So thank you all once more for those of you who resisted until the very end. I look forward to seeing you in Munich in 2 months for the closing event. And I would like to say the final words to thank the EUGLO team, all the people that made this possible. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. So thank you very much. And I hope to see you in Munich soon. Bye-bye.
We now invite all in-person participants for a EUGLOHRIA cocktail and our final networking bingo. We invite you to connect with speakers and other participants. On behalf of the Oporto and the EUGLO Alliance partners, we thank you for your participation, both online and in person. We hope to see you again soon and wish all EUGLO delegations a safe journey home.